The first thing Warden Instructor Thome Ibarak said to me was, "Your plates will dim by the third day." I didn't have plates. I told him so. He marked it down as defiance. I'd been on the Pelcor remediation wing for 6 hours, routed there by a flagment for a cadet named Deseno Kafu, one transposed letter away from my own name. Nobody in processing wanted to fix it before the next intake cycle. So I stood in a line of 9 flagged cadets, 3 Coranthi, 2 Vel, a Dravos who wouldn't stop shaking, 2 species I didn't have names for yet, and me, while Ibaraks walked the row reading necks that weren't there to read. He was tall in the way Coranthi are tall, joints stacked wrong by human standards, and the plates ran in a double row from his collar to the base of his skull, each one a thin pane of chitin lit faintly from underneath. Calm light. Steady. The mark of a superior who has never once had to dim for anyone. Remediation exists, he said, to restore correct posture to the incorrectly postured. His plates didn't flicker once through the whole line. You will learn what your bodies already know how to tell you. I'd spent 4 years on Kepler Rig 9 reading pressure gauges that didn't care about my feelings either. I filed his sentence under the same heading: information, not threat. The first drill was a watch rotation, 18 hours awake, standing, no chair, no wall to lean on, while a recorded tone counted down to nothing and started over. 2 cadets dropped by hour 11. The Dravos went down at 14, folding sideways without a sound, and 2 attendants carried him out like furniture. I stayed upright by doing what I'd done on double shifts during a rig fire drought. I stopped fighting the exhaustion and started managing it. Weight on the heels, not the knees. Eyes soft focused on a fixed point. Breathe on a 4 count. It's not toughness. It's procedure. Procedure doesn't get tired the way people do. By hour 17, I was the only cadet still standing who hadn't been propped against something. Ibaraks came down the row a second time. His plates, I noticed, brightened slightly when he looked at the ones who'd folded. Confirmation, maybe. Then he looked at me, and the light held flat and even, and something in his jaw, if that's what it was, shifted in a way I didn't have a word for yet. "You are tired," he said. It wasn't a question. It was supposed to be a diagnosis. "I'm tired," I agreed. "I'm also still standing." He wrote something down. The second drill was labor, framed as humility, clearing a flooded sub-level drainage gallery by hand, no tools issued, water to the knee, sediment that stank of something I didn't ask about. The point, I understood by the second hour, wasn't the work. The point was watching us do degrading work in front of each other until something in us decided we were the kind of person who does degrading work. I'd hauled drill mud out of a flooded shaft on Kepler with my bare hands once, 6 hours, because the pump had seized and the alternative was losing the whole rig. I knew this motion. Bend. Scoop, turn, deposit, reset. I gave it the same 4-count breathing and treated the smell as a known hazard with a known mitigation. Mouth closed, breathe through the nose, don't think about it as anything other than throughput. One of the Vel cadets started crying around hour 3, not from pain, from something else, something that had been building since the watch rotation. Ibaraks didn't move to stop him. He let it run its course in front of the others, the way you'd let a pressure valve bleed off on its own. His plates pulsed once, bright, when the valve finally sat down in the water and stopped working. I kept working. Bend, scoop, turn, deposit, reset. "You don't stop," Ibarak said. He'd come to stand at the gallery's edge, dry, watching. The gallery doesn't clear itself if I stop. That is not why I run this drill. "I know," I said. "I'm doing the drill anyway. I'm just not doing the part where it works." I felt his attention sharpen on me in a way that had nothing to do with the words. I went back to the sediment. By the 4th day, the cohort was down to 4. The Dravos didn't come back. One of the 2 unnamed species cadets had been quietly reassigned, which I understood by then was Pelcor's word for something else. The remaining Coranthi cadets had both dimmed in the specific, total way Ibaraks' species apparently considered correct. Plates gone dark and flat, eyes down, posture folded inward like a closed hand. I watched it happen to the older one during a session I wasn't present for and saw the aftermath in the mess hall. He ate without looking up, without speaking, moving exactly the way Ibaraks' opening speech had promised we all would. Nobody told me what came next. I found out by being marched, alone this time, into the central drill yard of the remediation wing, full lights up, the wing's clerk seated at a console along the wall with a data slate already open. Cohort assembled along the rail to watch. This, I understood from the way the room arranged itself, was the wing's signature event. The thing the watch rotation and the gallery had been building toward. The thing that, by reputation, nobody walked away from with their plates still lit, if they had plates, or their composure intact, if they didn't. Ibarak stood across from me in the yard center, plates steady, bright, certain. "This is correction," he said, loud enough for the rail. "Posture is restored here. Every cadet who has stood in this yard has left it changed." "I believe you," I said. "You will kneel." I'd read enough by then, 3 days of watching Karanthai body language, 3 days of asking the one attendant willing to talk to me what the plates meant, to know this wasn't really about my knees. It was a test of whether I'd perform the posture of someone broken, regardless of whether I was. Compliance theatre. I'd seen the RigCorp version of it. Safety officers who wanted you to recite the hazard checklist out loud even when you both already knew it, because the recitation was the actual deliverable, not the knowledge. So I thought about it the way I'd think about any procedure with an unclear hazard profile. What does kneeling cost me? Nothing, materially. What does refusing cost me? Unknown, possibly everything, in a system I didn't fully understand yet. I knelt. I watched his plates brighten, fast, almost a flare, and for 1 second I thought that was the whole drill, that the wing's reputation was simpler than advertised. Then he said, "Now recite what you have learned here," and I understood the actual test had just started, because compliance without the right words still wasn't submission, not by his species grammar. "I learned that the watch rotation works on sleep debt," I said. "I learned the gallery drill works on humiliation response. I learned this yard works on whether I'll perform defeat to make your plates do the thing they're supposed to do when a cadet is corrected." I kept my voice level. Procedural. A safety briefing, not a confession. I don't have plates. I never will. So I don't know what you're actually measuring right now, and neither, I think, do you. The yard went very quiet. Along the rail, I heard the older Karanthai cadet, the one who dimmed and gone silent in the mess hall, make a small sound I didn't have a name for. Ibarax's plates didn't brighten this time. They didn't dim either. They held, then flickered, once, involuntary, a stutter in light that every Karanthai in that yard would have read instantly and that even I, 3 days into this, recognized as wrong. Wrong the way a pressure gauge needle wrong is wrong. Not broken exactly, but reporting something the system wasn't built to display. "You are kneeling," he said. It came out thinner than his other sentences had. "I am. It didn't cost me anything to kneel." That's not the same as what you needed it to mean. His plates flickered again, longer this time, and along the rail I watched 2 of the remaining cohort lift their heads for the first time in days, watching not me but him, watching the warden's own neck do the thing he'd spent 4 days promising would happen to us. The clerk at the console had stopped typing. I found out afterward that the wing's intake system had a field, mandatory, for every cadet processed through remediation, outcome classification, a closed list, built off 400 years of Karanthai correctional doctrine. Submitted. Reassigned. Dimmed compliant. Removed. The clerk sat with her hand over the field, cursor waiting, because nothing in front of her matched an option on the list, and the system would not let her leave it blank. Ibarax recovered his composure the way I imagine anyone does after their own biology contradicts them in public, by retreating to procedure. He said the session was concluded. He said my file would be reviewed. He did not say I was corrected, because there was no way to say it that his own plates hadn't just refused to support. I was still kneeling. I stood up on my own, because nobody had told me to, and nobody stopped me. 3 days later I was still on the wing, still misfiled, waiting for processing to notice their transposed letter and send me back where I belonged. The clerk found me in the mess hall and sat across from me without asking, which I'd learned by then meant something on this wing. "I had to open a new field," she said. "In your record. There wasn't one for what happened in the yard." "What did you call it?" She turned the slate so I could see it. Under my name, under 4 days of drills logged in the wing's clinical shorthand, was a line that hadn't existed in the Pelcor system before that afternoon, typed in the same flat administrative font as everything else, as if it had always been there and they'd simply never needed it until now. Outcome: did not break. No further classification available. I read it twice. Then I ask her to log my transfer request the moment processing's correction came through, because I had a rig to get back to, and rigs, unlike academies, only ever measured one thing about a person: whether the work got done. She said she would. Then she asked, quietly, off the record, what it had felt like, kneeling in that yard with every light in the place aimed at me and the warden's own plates failing in front of his cohort. I told her the truth. It hadn't felt like anything in particular. I'd run the hazard, mitigated what I could, and waited for the procedure to end, the same as I would have on any rig, in any flooded gallery, on any double shift nobody thought I'd finish. She wrote that down too. I don't know what field she put it in. I don't think the wing had one for that, either.